Authorities are evacuating residents from earthquake-hit Christchurch as New Zealand's Prime Minister John Key visits the city to assess the damage. Mr Key travelled to Christchurch with Civil Defence Minister John Carter after the 7-magnitude earthquake rocked the country's second largest city early this morning. It caused widespread damage, buildings collapsed, power lines are down and residents fled, and water and sewage systems are damaged. So far there have been no deaths, but 2 men were seriously injured. One man's now in the intensive care unit after being hit by a falling chimney. Another has serious glass cuts. A state of emergency has been declared.
Early indications are there is quite significant damage to not only just personal and private property, but obviously assets right across the city. And I suspect today we'll only get a snapshot of the extent of the damage. It'll take quite some time to assess buildings, and it'll probably be some months before we know the full extent of it. But clearly the early indications are it could run into the billions of dollars. Just flying over when we could obviously see some disruption to buildings, it was difficult to get a really close assessment of it. I think we're going to need to do that on the ground. Certain parts of traffic have been blocked off, obviously, but I think really we won't get a full sense of it until we actually have an opportunity to go down and see it firsthand at ground level.
Well, the city's mayor, Bob Parker, says infrastructure checks are underway. He's urging people to conserve water and stay off the roads. Mr Parker says the damage could be worse than previously thought.
In some ways, we've been extraordinarily lucky when it's come to the citizens here. But in terms of the scale of the damage, I think it's absolutely immense, and we're really just beginning to come to terms with the scale of what we've got in front of us at the moment.
And let's get more details now from TVNZ correspondent Joy Reid in Christchurch.
That earthquake this morning has caused a heck of a lot of damage. It was very violent, shaking for up to a minute, just over 7 on the Richter scale, and has caused so much damage. Behind me you can see just the remnants of some rubble which is being cleared here in the central city. That building, the entire face of it just fell down and crumbled. Luckily it was a restaurant, and luckily being 4:30 in the morning there was no one there, and so no one was injured. But that's just one of many buildings around the city which has completely been destroyed today. But it's not just the buildings that they're concerned about, it's also the wastewater pumping stations. Many of those are down, and many unsafe structures. Many of the buildings behind me at the moment, people don't know whether or not they're safe enough to enter, and so there's a complete lockdown here in the central city. No one is allowed in unless they're a structural engineer or a contractor coming to see just how safe it is. And we've had helicopters whirling around above us as well, doing observations from air, and also you've got a lot of the outlying areas close to the city, but a lot of those are far more affected than here as well, in terms of some of those properties are just covered in sewage which has been spilling out because of these broken sewage mains. And so clean water is a big problem here in Christchurch today, because the water is not clean, and so that in turn is creating a lot of problems. There are many people who don't have ways of getting that, and the power's also out. People a lot older than I am and have lived in the city a lot longer than I have say they've never experienced anything like this. In fact, experts are saying this is the largest earthquake that New Zealand has had since the devastating earthquake in Napier in the 1930s, and where hundreds of people were killed. But it's a very Kiwi attitude, she'll be right. The community is really coming together on this. Everybody's checking on their neighbours. I guess a lot of people though are still in shock. It really hasn't sunk into a lot of people just how severe the damage is. We're really not even in the clean-up mode yet. It's just seeing how bad things are. You see, even underneath where we're standing at the moment, the City Council is not sure just how sturdy everything is underneath these roads, underneath these buildings, and it really is a situation which we'll only really grasp the true extent of it over the coming days.
TVNZ's Joy Reid there in Christchurch.